Hey everyone, welcome back to Meet the Makers. It's me, Nick Mataragas, the artistic director of the Elgin Fringe Festival. Thank you for joining us today, whether that's live or watching it after it's been recorded. I am joined today by the creator of a very interesting animated show called The Opinions of Men, Ben Dudley. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So your show is completely animated. It's there's no live action people at all in it. How did you come to the decision to make an animated piece?
Well, I mean, a big thing was they got this pandemic on right now. And I had originally planned for this to be a live action thing. I had just done a really big, popular show with like 12-person cast where everybody was playing like five roles. And I wanted to like try to do something like that again, but with this historical story. And then everything happened, and it seemed like at first like, well, maybe we can still like film it in person, and then ultimately it was just like, well, might as well make a cartoon. But I still got to have everybody that I wanted, in it. I just recorded them, over the phone.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Um, obviously, you didn't do all the voice work on this, and you mentioned you had other people record. And were they all over the phone, or how did you maybe a little bit more detail on how you got the audio of everyone?
Yeah, sure. So the characters, some of the characters are really small. There's a couple like 1 or 2 line cameos, and then some have just like maybe a minute or two. Those quite often I would kind of give people their lines and give them a description of the tone of the piece, and then they would record it on their own and like send me the files. And if I needed something else, I would ask. But like the people with a lot of lines, for a lot of them, I was on the phone with them. Like I would be reading the other lines or giving them direction, like, oh, try this one again, like that. So yeah, it was kind of a mixture of them kind of working on their own and sending it to me, and then for some of them, I was there, doing the other lines.
Okay. And you mentioned that the original plan was for it to be live action before, everything happened. Do you have previous experience working in animation, or was this kind of like I'm going to have to try it?
Yeah, no, this was completely, I have never done animation before, but like that's kind of something that I like about. I've been doing like the Cincinnati Fringe Festival since 2012. And kind of the thing I like about that is like trying something new every year. Like I had never done a horror play, so I did one of those. Then I'd never done a musical, so I did one of those. Like just the idea of trying something completely new and being like, well, I'm quarantined for pretty much unlimited time. I'm not going to feel guilty about sitting in front of the computer because there's nothing else to do. I just decided to animate it. And at first I was looking at apps on my phone that like make the mouths move a little bit on pictures. And I was like, could this be a whole play? But fortunately, I kind of stumbled across some better programs and put it together.
That's good because it works. It does, and what I think is kind of an interesting thing with the animation of this is that it's like a hodgepodge of like different styles. Like you can tell you just pulled stuff from some areas and some from others, and like you brought in like imagery of the historical figures that you had. So like Henry VIII. No spoiler, but it's about the piece is about the Reformation, and so it goes into Henry VIII. And so you have that very famous image of Henry VIII, but then you also have like lesser known people that you don't have images of, and the styles are different, but it kind of all works together in a weird overarching way.
That's good to know. I was hoping, like, my ultimate goal was that it would work. So that's good to know that it did. But yeah, I mean, like, I was limited to things that I could find that were public domain or like completely unlicensed. So I spent like a month or two just like stockpiling like every public domain loot song I could find, or like every vaguely 1400s, 1500s, drawing I could find. And so that was kind of fun. Kind of setting up what I had to work with, and then I just left the animation to like the final week. So that was a big crunch week, but it was fun collecting everything.
I bet that was a crunch for the final week. One thing I noticed when watching it was there were a couple of moments where you took very recognizable areas or buildings and said they were something else. Was that something that like came out of necessity and then became a bit, or was that something you like knew you wanted to do ahead of time?
It's I think it kind of speaks to the tone I was going for of like vaguely accurate but still oddly wrong in an overall sense, where it was like, okay, you're showing me Versailles and saying it's the Vatican. This is still a relevant place and it's a real historical place, but not the right one. So it was just kind of like, what one of my overall goals with the whole play was to be like, look, history and people seeking power and all these powerful men are absurd, and they are driven to absurdity by power, and they remain absurd. So I like to put little things in there where it was like, just slightly off. Like I recognize that, but it's not quite what I think it is.
I think that's a good, that's interesting. You talk about absurd men of power, and you kind of what I think is interesting is you show that on all the sides. You don't just show it like, this side is being ridiculous. It's like, you have the Catholics and the Pope over here being ridiculous. And then you have Martin Luther, who you definitely portray as kind of an odd, weird, ridiculous dude as well. And so it balances that out. And honestly, there's maybe only one figure in the entire piece that is like, you're like, okay, they're kind of just cool. And that's towards the end there, and I don't want to spoil who that is, but I think that's very interesting in that sense. Why did you choose the Reformation for your piece?
So something about me is that I'm really obsessed with the show Jeopardy, and I've been studying for it for like 3 or 4 years, tens of thousands of flashcards. I have all these little audio files of just the questions with like the terrible contestant stories cut out. And something just through that I've really come to find history interesting, because you have to spend a lot of time with it, going like, okay, James the Second, and then this person, and then that person, and just the overall like absurdity that like is kind of at the root of everything going on back then, where it's just like, this is the past, we don't know anything, but this is very important, and I'm gonna kill you. Like just like all that stuff was very interesting to me. And then kind of like a more direct influence was just like a couple years ago, I made a tweet that was just about Martin Luther hitting up his neighbor to use his printer, and the neighbor's like, okay, well, you just got a couple of theses, right? And he's like, it's 95. And like it just kind of grew from there. I'm a big fan of taking like maybe like a little comic strip I drew years ago and turning that into something like, finding the right format for ideas is a lot of fun to me.
That's cool. And I think what's interesting is that, um, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it definitely, the way you've portrayed the Reformation and the way you've built the story, um, definitely feels a lot like right now, and some of the things that some of the characters say feel close to what's going on right now in the world. And so I don't know if that was intentional or if it just kind of happened that way, or
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was intentional for sure. Just it's hard to ignore, like things like economic disparity and like power and things like that. And that's why kind of in the play, like you said, I make fun of everybody, but in the end, it's like the normal, like hardworking everyday people. They're the ones who actually have all the power, but they've just been like deluded into thinking like these great leaders who are actually absurd, know what they're talking about. And that's kind of something that I was touching on there. It's like being powerful and rich does not exactly make you a hero by default.
that's a good point. And I think it's there's there's this one, I would say, relationship in this piece that is, I don't know, it's kind of like this fun. It's supposed to be like, I'm guessing it's supposed to be kind of the comic relief of the piece is the two Henrys, but it's interesting because you show the fallacy of all of these people, including the Henrys. But at the same time, Henry VIII is such a well-known figure, and he's known to be kind of an awful person. And, he killed his wives and he did all these things. And you almost kind of pull back that a little bit with your portrayal of Henry in this, because he's got just that hint of humanity now with his interactions with the other Henry. Was that something that you thought about, or is it just kind of, that just happened?
It's not. I guess I didn't make their friendship as a way of like commenting on them necessarily, especially Henry II of France, who wasn't really that, influential. I
Mm-hmm.
actually just read today how he died in reality, and I can't remember. There was like he got a splinter in his eye or something. I can't remember, but it was something pretty gross. But yeah, no, I think I just like that their relationship because it is kind of pure and silly and simple. Like it's just literally, wait, you're King Henry, I'm King Henry, and then they're best friends. And I think that's more to like contrast like, oh, this is a simple guy, not this like god that he's made out to be, whether good or bad. He's actually just this kind of dumb guy who wants to be pals with this guy who has his name. And I don't
So that kind of leads me into kind of the other side of it, and I just wanted to ask, why do popes have such crazy eyes?
like the popes in the play.
Yeah.
Well, a more technical answer is that a lot of the characters in the play, the program I use uses like puppets of characters essentially, where
Mm-hmm.
like all the different parts are different layers in Photoshop. And you basically set it up like as this is the right hand, this is the left eyebrow, and then you can kind of animate on the fly. So a lot of these were puppets that I found for free online, and then I put them into Photoshop and kind of altered them. Like the Pope was like a wizard with like a hat and all this stuff, and I erased those things and like gave him like a flowy robe and stuff. So like the Pope's eyes, I wish I could take credit for those, but they just came with the puppet itself. But fun fact, a way to like the way I animated everything is you designate all spots in their faces, and then you put your face up to the camera, and it like aligns with everything. So as they're talking, I'm moving my eyebrows and moving around like this. So all the
Oh,
motion is pure me, baby.
so that's that. So it was motion capture. That's really cool.
Yeah, essentially.
That is wild.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun doing it you do it for like every single character, and even if they're off to the side, you're like over there listening, like uh-huh. It's
So
kind of
basically, if Andy Serkis ever decides to retire, you can just jump right in at this point.
when King Kong came out, I did a really good King Kong impression. I don't ask me to bring it out now, but it was, I was doing all that and it was great. So yeah, actually, yeah, I'm the next Andy Serkis. I'm gonna quote you on that.
Oh, good. You can. You definitely can. So this is obviously this piece is very rooted in history. And you said you've been doing fringes for how long now?
Since 2012, so it's
Okay.
my ninth or eighth or ninth year.
So do your pieces generally have to do with history, or is this something that you're kind of just like, hey, I wanted to do a history this time?
Yeah, no, they don't typically. I do like to try. I do a lot of different things, but typically it's like absurd humor is a thing. But I kind of like to have things that are grounded in reality with like a slight twist to it. Not not like that's a revolutionary or anything, but that's kind of my approach. But yeah, no, I've never done anything with history. I think it all just came back to like I was looking for something that could work as a play, and I saw those tweets in my idea folder or whatever, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. Martin Luther, he loves himself. He thinks he has the best idea in the world, and he's a weird neighbor. Yeah, and it just kind of grew from there.
And you mentioned tweets, but like you also incorporate Twitter into the piece. And I think one of my favorite jokes or like running gags in the piece is the Twitter thing where like anything to you still have a couple characters left, anything to add, and you just throw out the most obvious thing people generally put at the end of a Twitter or at the end of a tweet. Where you're just like, of course they are, which I think is hilarious, especially given the context of what those tweets were.
Yeah. I didn't count the characters, so that's probably way off. But I just let's just the suspension of disbelief would be helpful there.
Fair enough. Um, so you said this was originally supposed to be a stage, a live production, right? So like visually, what was that going to be like? Because it's a lot of like right now, obviously the final piece has a lot of narration
Mm.
and storytelling. Were you planning on having a narrator, or how was that format going to be different?
I wasn't gonna have a narrator. I think I was gonna have kind of the same as it is now, but having like the Martin Luther with Verner and Catherine, like that's kind of like a through line. and then the two Henrys, they're kind of there as a through line, kind of tying everything together. Like they would be kind of the narrative push with like vignettes in between them. But yeah, I mean, it did. I'm kind of glad it became a cartoon because the logistics of just like, you know, quick changes and like people walking behind one thing coming out of somebody else, and like that would have been really difficult because I every time I would try, I would be like writing a whole scene, then I would be like, oh, they can't be in this one because they're over there. And so I think the animation thing was kind of a lifesaver when it came to that, because I haven't really done anything with a big cast or, you know, quick changes or anything like that before, so it was going to be a trial run.
And you mentioned, if I get the name wrong, I'm sorry, Verner, who is kind of the everyman of the piece.
Yeah.
Is he an actual historical figure? Did he actually exist?
No,
Okay.
He's just like kind of a generic, yeah, like you said, everyman.
Mhm.
And that's kind of something that I tried to do with the characters, where like historical people would be either like actual paintings of them or like, you know, old historical drawings, whereas like kind of the everyday people and like the peasants and stuff, I would use more cartoonish puppets for them, just to kind of like set them apart from like these people we have up on the pedestal and they exist in this historical painting versus like an actual person. So that's that kind of, I tried to make him look like kind of like a, you know, kind of dumpy cartoon dude, and just kind of, you know, going with the flow. I just got to find the right smart person to tell me how to live my life and I'll be fine.
He kind of feels like, and I don't know who your influences are, so this might be completely off, but he feels like an Arthur Dent kind of character from Hitchhiker's Guide, where
Sure.
it's kind of, he's kind of there for the ride, and he's kind of like, I guess this is happening right now around me. Um, and I don't know if Douglas Adams is an influence of yours, or I would also say that there are moments that definitely felt very kind of Monty Python-y, especially the ending felt very Monty Python to me. And I don't know if those are your influences, but do you have like specific like people or groups that you're like, these people really influenced my work?
Yeah, I mean, I do like Monty Python and I do like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think I also just in my own humor, I kind of err towards self-deprecating. So a lot of times my protagonists will be just like, you know, it's somebody that you like, even though like every character is saying like, oh yeah, you smell terrible and you're an idiot, but like you're still like, oh, but he's a great guy. I've always kind of liked that. But yeah, in terms of people who influence me a lot, I don't know. I listen to a lot of like podcasts, like improv podcasts, Spontaneation, Comedy Bang Bang. Like I love like just a good conversation that's like carried out as a realistic conversation, but about the weirdest possible thing. Like two monarchs reading in the paper how they died 20 years ago, and they're like, oh, okay, oh, good to know. Like just I don't know, just things like that. A good improvised conversation is something that goes a long way for me.
Okay. And do you have a background in improv, or is that just something you're interested in, or?
I mean, in everyday life, in a non-improv setting, I'm pretty good at improv. But if I go up on a stage and try to do improv, which has happened twice, no, kind of dries up. I like the last time I tried to do improv, I was like, well, I could do my Ronald Reagan impression, which I don't even have a Ronald Reagan impression. And I was just like, well, and I just kept doing that and it was a disaster and they had to save me. But so no, I mean, I've done like stand up and I like to do, you know, I do a little acting. Not the best actor, but if I find the right role, like a neurotic weirdo, I can play that. But yeah, no, it's more like stand up and that kind of background. And then in conversation, I'm a great improvist.
I will say that two times is not enough to become a good improviser.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. I know. I was just.
But I totally get that. And I actually know improvisers that are just like, okay, I'm going to do this impression or this character now. So you're not that far off.
Well, good. Yeah, I think just as a writer, I so value like editing and taking the time to do things. I did like a couple of like kind of moth style storytelling shows in the past. And there was like a rehearsal beforehand where we all did it. And then I came in the next day and did it. And it was like a 20-minute long story. And this guy came up to me like, that was verbatim from yesterday. I was like, yes, if I get to prepare and memorize and edit things, I am comfortable. I'm not going up there unprepared. So yeah, I'll memorize the book if that's what it takes.
Oh, that is great. That's funny because I think that is like there is this kind of dichotomy in the entertainment world where there's this where some people are very much like it has to be set up and this is how it is and it has to be exact. And then there's like the other side where you're just like, I don't know, it just happens.
Yeah.
Um, and it is a very interesting kind of fusion that can happen sometimes with that kind of stuff. So, and I think that maybe lends to animation again, where you're like, this is how it's going to be set up, and this is how it happens.
Yeah.
Is that part of the reason maybe you really enjoyed the animation so much?
I think so for sure. Like, just you're only bound by how much time you have, because there were scenes where, like, I grew up on The Simpsons. That's probably a big influence on me too, where
Okay.
I have a good appreciation for putting funny signs in the background that most people probably won't even catch and things like that. So, if I have unlimited time, I can add jokes to the background. I can tweak this, make that person's head look a little better. Like, I love being able to just, work on something until I have it exactly the way I want it. So animation was definitely something that was good for that. Except for the fact that my computer is slightly on the older side, so there were definitely times where I would click and it would be like 7 minutes until the click registered, and I was like, I need to go outside and take a walk because I can't handle this right now. But
I think
I eventually finished it.
I think it's interesting you mentioned like the little like hidden jokes and stuff. I think the hardest I laughed while watching your piece was the writing on the wall in Verner's basement.
Oh,
I think it was either in German or Latin, but I knew exactly what it said, and I was just like, "This is ridiculous."
yeah,
And
yeah. German for live, laugh, love.
yeah, and I just it caught me so off guard, and those little things, I think I don't know if they make a show successful, but they deepen a show. They take something that is good and they add to it. So I think it's always important to have that kind of stuff, and I think you did a really good job of that in this piece for sure.
Thanks.
Um, so do you have what do you have like? Obviously, the world doesn't like is going to dictate everything, but do you have any like plans for future projects or?
Uh, Yeah, I mean, I'm a big idea person. I have a lot of projects and a lot of things I'm working on. I just finished a graphic novel after took about 5 years, where I wrote it, and then had like 20 to 25 different artists from around the world do like the different stories in it and stuff.
Oh, cool.
So trying to get that published currently, which already a niche market, and then pandemic. So we'll see how that goes. But then in terms of like theater and stuff, I think I'm kind of taking this time to revise a few plays, because there's been a lot of just like fringe shows over the years that could stand to be made longer or be revised, and things like that. So I'm kind of, while things are a bit quiet, mainly just working on like revising, and I would love to do more animation too. That's something I would definitely like to do now that I have a sense for how it works.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think there is something very human and comforting about the style of animation that you're doing, and I think it works well with your writing. So you should. Um,
I had one of the reviews I read compared it to like early 2000s Flash animation, and they said it made them nostalgic, and I hadn't even like really thought about that, but yeah, I was like, oh yeah, it was kind of like the blocky, like silly cartoons from back then. So maybe that was a subconscious influence.
yeah, I can see that. I totally can see that. So you mentioned you've been doing fringes for a while now. This is your first time with Elgin, though, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Up
Okay.
until this year, I had only done the Cincinnati Fringe Festival because they were live shows, and I couldn't really, I wasn't in a place to take them on the road.
Okay.
So this year, since it's a video and I can send it out, I've done a couple different fringes, and it's been really cool. I've really enjoyed it so far.
Has it inspired you to maybe travel a little bit more once you can?
I would like to. I've always really wanted to. I had a show a few years ago that was kind of popular, and it was about like an office where they found out that like this one like will they won't they kind of couple that had a secret romance found out that everybody was like writing fan fiction about their potential relationship, and there were like competing storylines and stuff, and that was such a huge hit, and I really wanted to take it on the road, but it was like 7 people and like a crew and stuff, and it's just like the logistics were, but I would love to take shows out, maybe if I wrote like a smaller piece or something.
Right. I mean, that sounds like a really fun show, but
Oh,
yeah, I could see that being for, especially for a traveling Fringe show, that'd be tough with that large of a cast and everything. Very, very interesting. So do you have, Ben, do you have any, anywhere people can find more about you, like a Twitter handle or Facebook or whatever?
yeah. I'm not on Facebook a ton, but I do have Twitter and Instagram. Let me see what my names are on those things real quick. I should know that. I'm bad at social media in a way. But stalling for time. My social media is okay. So on Instagram and Twitter, it's Ben H Dudley, and it's the same on both. That's my first name, my last name, and my middle initial. Just in case that was like, what's the H? My middle initial.
That makes sense. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Just so you guys know, Ben's show, The Opinions of Men, is available at the Elgin on the Elgin Fringe Festival website, elginfringefestival.com, up through October 4th. It's only $5 to see. That $5 goes right back to Ben. So please give him that $5. He needs it. We all need that money. All of us producers need that money.
Tux is so old. Like I need a new tux. So
he does. That's why I didn't say anything about it, is because I'm like, it's a little dated. But if you want to see all the shows for the festival, it's only $50 to watch all the shows, and that money goes to the artist as well. So please do that. If you are in Elgin, you should come down to the gallery, which is where I'm at, on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and check out the art that is part of the festival as well. It is amazing, and you can even buy it if it is for sale. Some of it's not for sale, but most of it is. And please keep watching these. Our next interview is tomorrow with Miss Pixie at noon. So please tune in for that. Thank you so much for watching today. And once again, thank you, Ben, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. That was fun.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.